Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. My name is Chris Grossi, and I'm the Managing Director of Highmetric here in the UK. I will be your host for the next 45 minutes as we explore what's new in ServiceNow's New York release for IT operations management. For those of you who are unfamiliar with us, Highmetric are a global elite ServiceNow partner who specialize in helping our clients get work done with the ServiceNow platform. It is also my pleasure today to introduce our presenter, Derek Byrne, who is a Senior ServiceNow Solution Consultant here at Highmetric. Derek has been working in the IT operations management space for the last 20 years, helping clients maximize the value from their ITOM investments across a variety of different platforms and services. So, Derek, over to you for today's webinar.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining today. As Chris said, what we're going to cover is what's new in the New York release with special reference to ITOM. So over the next sort of like 30 to 45 minutes, I'm going to show various elements of it. Some of this I'm going to demonstrate to you, some of which we're going to talk about through slides. And at the end, we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A session as well. As we're going through this webinar, if you do think of any questions as we're going through, please do use the chat function on the control panel that you'll see there on your screens, and then we can address those questions at the end of the session. Right, let's get going. So what are we going to cover today? What are the new concepts within the New York release? For anyone who's seen any of the ServiceNow events, you've been to any of those, you've seen any of their execs on stage, or you've seen any of their webinars, one of the big items that they're always talking about is making your work life as great as your real life. And what it is that they really mean by that. I had an example I saw on the TV the other day. We've all seen these adverts, you know, that the phone manufacturers come out and they put these aspirational adverts together where they take you through the life or a day in a life of somebody who uses the phone for every part of their life, and it's all about that experience being very intuitive. There's an advert at the moment many of you may have seen where a user's driving through the countryside in their car and they see an alpaca farm, and the user thinks it'd be a great idea to buy some alpacas and do something with them. So you see the experience of the user using their phone to handwrite using a stylus a contract with the alpaca farmer, and that then turns it into a text and an official document using some software on the phone, all very intuitive and very quick. The alpaca farmer can then sign that on the screen. We then see that user in an investment meeting with a bunch of very stern-looking investors, and the whole presentation they do is from their phone. And again, it's all very intuitive, very easy to use. And they take them through that whole life story of actually getting the contract signed and their business being a very big success. But again, at every stage, they use their phone, and it's a very intuitive experience. If we take our own lives, we've probably all used an application like Uber or some of the various food ordering apps to order pizza over a Friday evening. We've all seen how easy these are to use. The one thing that we all struggle with, though, is that experience isn't always replicated in our work life. A lot of us still have applications that we use that are a little bit clunky. We have to go to multiple screens. They're not always integrated together. And that's what ServiceNow is trying to change. They've been doing this through the various different releases, and they've done even more now within the New York release. But that's why I was just mentioning that strapline I got from one of the ServiceNow events, which is making work life as great as real life. And that's what I'm going to run through today, some of the enhancements. We're going to reflect that. We're also going to talk about some of the other enhancements within the product. A couple of themes that we're going to look at are intelligence. So how within the product we can use things like machine learning to make your experience even better, to start looking for trends. We're going to focus on the workspace concept that ServiceNow brought in a couple of releases ago and how that's now enhanced within the ITOM infrastructure. And then we're also going to talk about mobile. Of course, we're going to talk about mobile. It's a big part of our lives now. So we're going to show what the ITOM part of ServiceNow looks like on a mobile device. So those are the themes that we're going to run through. Before I jump straight into product, one of the things I wanted to show you was the new structure within ITOM that ServiceNow have released with the New York release. Anyone who's dealt with ITOM within ServiceNow in the past has looked at the various different parts of the product and thought, functionally it is quite rich, but when you start getting into the licensing structure there and also trying to understand what parts of the product are doing what, sometimes it can get a little overwhelming in the past, and it was a little complex. Feedback from customers was heard by ServiceNow, so they simplified it, and that's what this slide's all around here, this product rationalization. So what ServiceNow has done is broken down the whole of the ITOM suite, into three sections or three packages. First of all, there's ITOM visibility. Now within there, we have obviously discovery and service mapping. The reason for that is if you don't know what's in your environment, whether that's physical or cloud, virtual, if you don't know what's in there, how on earth can you ever try to monitor it? How on earth can you ever try to optimize that for better use in the future? And for me, this is almost like a maturity curve. You have to start at that beginning piece, which is getting visibility of your entire infrastructure. So we want to know what's in our environment, again, physical, virtual, and cloud. We want to know how that's configured. We want to know what it's talking to. And then we want to put some business context around that communication to say, well, what does that actually mean for our business? You know, the fact that this server talks to this server via this piece of software, what does that actually mean? And that's where the service mapping comes in. We want to understand what the business service is that's been supported by that infrastructure that we've discovered. And that's really the whole point of visibility. Now, once you've got that piece done, you can move to the next level of maturity, which is the ITOM health. And within there, we've got the event management. So irrespective of what kind of monitoring tools that you've got, we hook those into ServiceNow and then start to understand what's going on with the various different pieces of infrastructure that we've discovered in the first phase. What's the disk usage? What's the memory utilization? How many hits is a website getting? And then making an assessment of the health of all of those bits of infrastructure or those services, because we know what our services look like now. And then within ITOM health, actually then putting a level of operational intelligence on that. This is where that machine learning piece comes in, because it's great having pages and pages and pages of metrics telling us how our servers are performing. But as a human, we don't respond to that particularly well. It's very difficult for us to trawl through all that and make some sense of it. So what I'll show you as we go through the demonstration is how the operational intelligence piece can help us understand what's going on in the environment and make better decisions. Now, the third product package that ServiceNow has put together is the ITOM optimization piece. So this is grabbing all of the almost provisioning and automation pieces around IT operations. So we started off with understanding what's in our environment and what business service it supports. We then look at the health of it. And then the last piece in the optimization is, well, how can we make better choices with that? How can we make better use of what we've got in the environment? And so this is all, I'm going to focus on the cloud management piece, but it's about being able to provision extra resources in the cloud if that's what's needed, or make better use of what's in there. Okay, so we'll touch on that during the demonstration. So you've probably seen this slide before. It's talking about all of the innovations that have been put into the new release, and the number we got from ServiceNow was 678. Obviously, we're not going to cover all of those today. We would need several hours to do that, and not all of these are ITOM focused. But I'm going to pull out a few of the big new ticket items that are going to attract customers to the New York release. I'm also going to focus on some of the smaller little pieces that sometimes get left behind. The ones I think are going to add some real value to customers. I'm also going to put focus on some of the ones that have restricted customers from going down the ITOM road in the past, and show you how we've resolved those and how now you could actually consider using the ITOM piece within ServiceNow around discovery and service mapping. So let's jump into the actual enhancements that we've got now with New York release. So following on from that theme of the various different packages, let's start off with visibility. So a couple of areas I'm going to focus on. What we've done around getting greater visibility of the cloud from a discovery point of view. I'm going to focus on some of the enhancements around security. And there's also another one I want to focus on here. Again, this is one of those smaller ones that sometimes gets overlooked, but there's some changes around how we deal with unplanned changes and the process around that. Now, some of you will sit there and go, well, hang on, that's not ITOM, that's ITSM. Change management belongs in there. The whole point of what I'm going to show you here is that how this links into ITSM. So we're not just dealing with siloed business processes here. All of the business processes should be connecting to each other. So ITSM connecting to ITOM. Anyone who saw my colleague Dom Lewington's presentation a few weeks ago around CSM, the customer service management, will have seen the connections between customer service and ITOM as well. So all of these processes should interact. So that's what we're going to cover now. So first one around the enhancements in cloud discovery. So for some time now, ServiceNow has been able to go and discover into AWS and Azure. And to be honest, if you talk to any customer over the last 3, maybe 5 years, those are really the 2 vendors that everyone was going to for cloud services. Not many people were going down the Google or the IBM road or any of the other vendors that are out there. But now we're starting to see that happen. So of course, ServiceNow has responded to that and the requests they're getting from customers, so they've added support. So now adding support for the APIs that allow ServiceNow to go into those environments, gather data, and then bring it back to the CMDB. Of course, the benefit of that really is that rather than you discovering half of your environment because it's, half of it's on site and it's virtual and you understand it, but if you've got Google, you're missing half of your environment. Therefore, service maps are incomplete, and that has a knock-on effect on the rest of the business. Now we're able to give you a complete view of everything that's in your environment, whether it's Google, IBM, AWS, on-site, virtualized infrastructure, whatever it might be. So we get a complete view of the service. Anyone who wants to utilize that and has the licensing for cloud discovery, it's just download the latest plugin and it'll be available on your instance. Next enhancement within visibility is around security. So one of the issues we saw a little while ago, and this is one of those things that stopped some organizations being able to use discovery within an AWS environment, was in order to make this work, we would obviously put a mid server. For those of you who are familiar with ServiceNow, a mid server, just a local presence which will gather local data. What we had to do to make that work was to put one of those mid servers within a VPC of AWS, and then it would be able to go and discover all of the various different virtual machines, or EC2s as they're called in AWS. The issue was that we had to grant that mid server a quite high level AWS user permission. And the knock-on effect of that was if the mid server ever got compromised, the either internal or an external actor who was doing that would be able to have full access to your AWS environment and be able to do all sorts of bad things, such as provisioning things they shouldn't, or decommissioning things, changing and gathering data, really stuff that we don't want them to be able to do. So the change now is that the user we require on the mid server is just a read-only account. So its security level is dropped right down to the bare minimum. So if that server ever does get compromised, there's nothing that actor can actually do to compromise your environment. And as I said, that has been a big sticking block for a lot of security teams when they assess using ServiceNow Discovery within their environment. They've said, no, you can't do that. Now we've got rid of that so that infrastructure teams and ITOM teams can actually start to use Discovery within AWS. The other one I mentioned very briefly was the unplanned change detection. Now, within ServiceNow, we've had this for a while. But this change now is more around service level detection. So let me paint you a little scenario here. You've used Discovery, you've figured out what's in your environment, you've created a service map, everyone's happy, and then the service map changes. Let's say it could be that the name of a server has changed, or a component has been upgraded, to a different version, whatever it might be. But what ServiceNow is doing is looking at the service level, at the service itself, and saying what has changed. Is there a change associated with that? is this an undocumented or an unplanned change? There's nothing related to it to let me know that this has been a planned change that has gone through a review process. So it detects that, it instantly then creates an emergency change ticket, which I've got a little picture of on the screen there for you, related to the CI that was within the service map, and then follows your emergency change process. The advantage of this is that you instantly know that somebody has made an unplanned change, and then we can either create or kick off a review process to see whether we need to back out of that change, or whether we're good with it, and then we just need to go down a path of making sure that user doesn't do it again. Maybe it's a bit of an education program, or whatever it might be, but we now know about it. Now, those who've used ServiceNow for some years will know that you could have created this using a business rule in the past, or a number of business rules. But the issue with that is you've got to go create those, and you've got to go maintain them. With this new functionality within New York, it's just available out of the box for you. Okay, let's move away from the visibility side of ITOM, more into the health side of things. So we've covered off some of the enhancements around discovery and service mapping. There's a few of the highlights there. Now I'm going to focus on ITOM health. This was one of the big ticket changes in the product. So I'm going to do a demonstration of this in a second for you, so you can actually see this running. But just give you some of the high level features of well, why this has happened and what's in there. So currently within ITOM Health, there is a dashboard that gives you a view of the health of all of your services, and it works pretty well, and it's very functional. Some of the feedback we've got from customers, though, is that when they're looking at that and they then want to go to maybe some related incidents or changes or problems, look at different alerts, difficult to navigate to that level sometimes to get the trend analysis. Very often you feel that you have to go to multiple different screens to do that work. It was also a little difficult to actually go search for services, group, filter, sort them. And one of the big feedback or pieces of feedback I've had from customers is, especially as they start to grow and into those larger enterprise customers, that they felt that the original dashboard didn't scale particularly well. So as you had more and more services on there, it became very difficult to read. And because of limitations with the grouping and sorting, it just became an unworkable dashboard. So what I'm going to show you in a demonstration now is what the new service health dashboard looks like, or the operator workspace that leads to that. So let's just come out of there and open up my screen here. What you can see on the screen now is the original event management dashboard. As I said, it's pretty good. It works really well. You could double click on one of the services on here. This one has got an outage, which has gone red. And it'll open up a view of the service itself. So a visual dependency dashboard, color coding on what it feels is broken based on the alerts that are listed at the bottom, and a little bit of detail about the application and service itself. Pretty good. But as I said, quite difficult to navigate from here into other things such as incidents, problems, changes, look for trends, remediation actions, things like that. Let me show you the new version that's coming out. So this is the new operator workspace. Oh, just refreshing there, bear with me a sec. Now, those of you who saw any of my colleague Dom's presentations would have seen a version of this. He touched upon the operator workspace a few times in relation to CSM. We're going to go into a lot more detail about the workspace now. But this workspace concept has been something that ServiceNow brought into the product. I think it was in Madrid, maybe just before that. But it's just supposed to be a new way of working, a much more intuitive way of working, going back to those themes that we were talking about before, about making work life a lot more like our easy private lives when we use technology. So within here, I've got a list of services and color coded again based on their criticality. Lots of ways to search, so I could just go and put a search path up on the top right there and it would go and find something for me. I could sort here by severity, business criticality of the service. So the difference being that business criticality is that if this service goes down, the business stops trading or doing whatever it is that it does, offering a service to the customers. Severity is the severity within the service itself. So whether this is a minor alert or a major one, and then costs, and then we can also do things like locations. So over here, we could break this down geographically. So we could say, just show me all of my EMEA services. Or we could go to break it down into APAC and North America as well. So lots of ways that we can start to play around with the look and feel of this. So that's a major enhancement to the way the actual product works. But let's go and look at one of these services. And just by clicking on it, I get a quick summary. Again, a much quicker way of getting in than we had before. Instantly at the top of that service, I can see who owns it. I can see the severity of that particular alert and the business criticality of the service itself. I get some metrics around the primary alerts that have led to this status. And I also get some data on the top alert itself, so I can click on that and look at the alert. Come back to that later. From here, I can also then click on the service map, which gives me a similar view to what I would have had in the previous dashboard when I want to look at the dependencies, the alerts. So we've still got that in there, should we need to use it. But the bit I want to focus on here is the service details. So instantly now it's pulled up the order status, which was the service we were looking at. And you'll see it's got a number of tab sections there, related lists as we would call them, looking at things like affected CIs, alerts, things like that. Before I dive into the detail, I just want to spend a few moments talking about the operator workspace in a little bit more detail. What is it that makes this special over and above what we've had before? Personally, as a user, one of the things I used to find quite annoying with most tools I've used over the years was if I was in a record like this and I was updating it, and then I get a call from somebody and I need to go to a different part of the technology to go and look at something. Very often I'd either have to get this record to a point where I could save it, that, you know, maybe there's 4 mandatory fields I've got to fill in before I can save it, or I just have to abandon my changes and go on to the thing I'm going to do and then try and come back and backtrack. It just becomes a little irritating, and we all have to multitask these days. Very few of us can deal with one thing at a time. It's just not part of the way we work. One thing we can do in here, though, is we can get a record to a certain stage and then leave it for a while we do something else and then come back to it without losing any of our changes, without having to go through that annoyance of having to fill in those mandatory fields first. So for instance, if I want to go back to my original workspace and look at a different service because someone's asked me to look at that, I can do that. So I could come over here and look at my customer analytics, and I can open up the service detail for that. And now you can see that I've got a tab open for customer analytics, and I've still got the original one for order status, and I can flip between the two as I need to. Maybe I want to do a comparison between the two, but I can do that now on the screen without having to lose any data. And we'll see this theme progress as I go through the order status. So obviously, I've now got some details about the order status service. I've got a list of related CIs. So these are all of the CIs that make up the order status service. That's good information to know. I can go and click on any of those if I want to. What I'm more interested in, though, is which CIs have been affected by the alert that's come in, this potential outage. So I can get a little bit more detail about those, see what's going on. Great, I can click on them and see what's happened. But maybe I want to look at things like what changes have been done recently to this service. So I've got that linked here. And I can see that, and I can click on it if I want to. As I click on it, you'll see it then opens up another tab. That tab's within the order status higher level tab. And again, if I wanted to go and look at customer analytics, I can. And I come back to my order status and I've still got the same screens. I've not lost any work. So I could look through the change. I could look at the change tasks that were done. See if there's anything in here that's going to give me a heads up as to what's causing the issues that I'm seeing right now. I'm not seeing anything there, so I'll leave that tab open for later use. I'll go back to the original order status service. I'm going to look through here. The only other thing I've got on here is related alerts. So let's go and have a look at those. So what alerts have come up that are driving this severe criticality that I've seen? So I click on that alert. It opens it up in another tab for me. And I will get a little bit of detail about that. So I get things like a little bit high level stuff about the alert itself and the fact that it's critical, the priority is high. I get a little bit more detail about the actual alert content itself. So this is telling me that a particular node, which is WIM42, disk C on that machine has fallen below 15%. So it's threshold breach, hence the alert. Great. And it also tells me that at the top of the screen. That's good to know. I've also got a timeline. This is a fairly simple timeline. It's just letting me know that there was an incident at that particular time, and that's what's caused it. But sometimes I may have multiples listed across here, and then I would see those all listed under secondary alerts over here. I'd have a whole list of secondary alerts, and I'd see them on the timeline as well. Again, it's giving me a little bit of a trend analysis to say, hey, there is something major going on with this machine, or something's constantly happening. Now, just exploring the tabs a little bit further, you'll see I've got a thing here called alert executions. What this is showing me is what automation has run against this alert. So the alert's kicked off, and what the system has automatically done for me is said, well, do you know what? I probably want to go and create an incident off the back of this. So again, coming back to our theme earlier about linking ITOM to other processes within ServiceNow, in this case, ITSM. So it's gone and created an incident for us, but it's also then automatically attached the log files to the incident. So I haven't had to do any of that manually, it's just done it for me. But I've also got the ability to do some manual remediation actions. So not just the automatic ones there. So here I could remove the log file if I didn't want it to be there. And it's also created this other remediation action here, which is expand disk space. Now, that's an in-context remediation action because the alert was about disk space. So it's given me the option to go and increase that disk space. You could have others in there, and I've seen lots of other examples over the years where things like, this isn't just something that has to happen in the new operator workspace, but it's a new way for us to do it. So we could do things like rebooting servers. We could reboot a specific technical service, so sort of like a DHCP service or DNS service on a particular server if that was required. There's a whole bunch of automatic actions we can kick off. So we can go and remediate, we can kick off provisioning actions, so we could spin up new VMs in the cloud if we needed to, and we'll come on to that later on within the optimization piece. So there's a whole bunch of actions we could do there, but of course they're all going to be tracked within this execution section here. So other things that we could do, let's look at the machine learning and the intelligence side of things. What if we want to get a little bit more insight as to what's been going on in the past? So what ServiceNow has done is it's gone, okay, we've got an alert to say we're at 15%, or we've dropped below 15% disk space. What do we want to do? And it's created some tickets off the back of that, but it's also gone and searched to say, well, do we have any similar alerts that were logged recently? That could be based on the server itself that had that issue, or the disk itself, or some other key language within the record. So it's only found one. Well, that's okay. It hasn't found any other incidents that were related, but it has found a change that was related. Now remember, when we first started to look at the order status service, we did see a past change that was related to the service. What we're seeing here isn't necessarily related to that. It could be related to any other attribute. So it could be the server name. It could be just the fact that the alert type was exactly the same. Okay, just giving us a little bit of trend to say, hey, that there's some other similar changes that have happened here. So we could click on that. Again, it opens a new tab for us, and we could go and have a look at that. What about problems? Let's go and have a look at those. So there is a problem here, and it's saying multiple changes for adding disk space. Actually, that could be quite interesting for us because we did have an action there that said go and expand the disk space. Before we do that, maybe we want to look at what problems are going on. So in here, we can see that a problem has been logged against that particular configuration item, saying that multiple changes for adding disk space have noticed on this server. So let's face it, what's happening is that the disk space keeps running out and somebody keeps on adding more space, but it keeps on running out on top of that. So there's something much more sinister going on here. And as we go through the problem, we can see things like a workaround has been put in place to automate the removal of unnecessary log files and add disk space. So that automation is either broken or it's just not been effective. But again, we've got a little bit more information. And all we've done is we've been in one place, the operator workspace, and just by clicking on the various different pieces of information, we can get a little bit more intel to the point where we can resolve our issue. And as you've seen, we've used a little bit of operational intelligence or machine learning to actually go and look for other trends for us. Okay, just come back to there. So that's a fairly quick demonstration of the new operator workspace. Let me just put that back into presenter mode for you and switch those around. There we go. Okay. The next thing I want to show or talk about is the ITOM optimization. That was the final product package within the new New York offering. You might be looking at this going, well, that's a fairly similar slide to we saw before when we were looking at ITOM visibility. So it's following a similar trend. More support has been added around Google and IBM. The reason I wanted to point this out, though, is that one of the things we talked about in the operator workspace a few minutes ago when we started to talk about remediation actions was being able to auto-provision, auto-remediate things, not just on-premise, but in the cloud as well. So the reason I mention this is if you are looking to do or utilize Google or IBM Cloud and you want ServiceNow to go and discover them, you've also now got the ability to provision into those. So as either part of a bigger project or as part of a remediation action that's fired off from ITOM, you could then go and change the configuration of any of your VMs within either Google or IBM. You can provision new ones, you can decommission old ones, change versions. Any provision action that either Google or IBM support, you can now fire off from within ServiceNow. Just by clicking on a button, of course, you can put approval actions on or whatever workflow you need. But we've now been able to expand that automation or those automation options out to Google and IBM. That's a fairly quick one. The final demo I want to finish off with is the ITOM mobile. So it doesn't really fall within any of the packages, either visibility, health, or optimization, because it's just part of the platform. And we've just created a mobile app that's very ITOM focused. So I'm just pulling that up on my phone and I'm just going to mirror that onto the screen in a second so I can actually show you this live. So bear with me a second just to use my streaming software here. This part isn't part of ServiceNow. This is just a piece of streaming software that I use to replicate my phone onto the screen. And that should come up any second. There we go, it's just coming up now. And I'm just going to make sure that I did put Do Not Disturb on. Excellent. All right, I'm just going to let that, just put that into full screen, just let that get itself sorted. Okay, so this is the ITOM mobile app. This is your ability to interact with ITOM via mobile. The idea being that people aren't always going to be in front of their laptop. They are going to be roving around. They may be working from home or transitioning into the office in the morning, so they can get access to everything from here. So first of all, they have a list of either the alerts or the services and the alerts for those services. If we click on one of those to begin with, we're going to look at the top alerts, and you'll see that there's a particular alert there, a little bit of information. I can click on that. And then I get a record representation on the screen telling me the details of that alert. I can look at the activity that's already happened on that alert. And I've got the ability down there to add some work notes. If it was the right thing to do, I could then take a picture of a particular piece of equipment and add that to the file if that was required, or attach a file. And then just let that render on the screen. Just wait a second. We've also got some other actions. This is linking into that trend analysis piece. So I could look for similar alerts if any existed. And give me a list of those. Again, I can click on that and get details about that alert. And from here, you'll see, watch wait for that to go on screen. I've also got the ability to look at impacted services from this alert, CI incidents that have been logged, or change requests related to the CI. So you'll see it's not just a very basic mobile app. I've got full interaction with this, and I can pull up my services if needs be as well and take it from that view. Let's look at our order service or order status app that we looked at before. Look at the alerts for that. Look at the one that we were looking at, I think was this one here. In fact, let me just pull this one up. There we go. The reason I just quickly flip between those two is that the original one already had an incident logged against it. I wanted to show you this as an example, is that if you wanted to go and manually create an incident off the back of an alert, you could do it manually here as well as the automated way we did it earlier. Fairly quick just overview of the mobile app, but anyone who's seen these webinars previously will have seen a little bit more around what the mobile app can do. But I just want to quickly show you the fact that you can get access to your lists, either alert lists or your service degradation lists, and you can drill through those, kick off a number of actions, and take it from there. The other thing you could do with the mobile app is actually have notifications spring up. Obviously, I've turned that off on my phone, so I'm not getting pop-ups from non-work related things, which would be a little embarrassing in the middle of a demonstration here. But you could have pop-ups, banners pop up on the screen. So if a user is out and about, or they're working from home or traveling, they could instantly have a banner pop up to let them know something's happened, and then go into the app to then deal with some remediation actions if they needed to. Right, so let's just minimize that. Let's go back into here, flip those around. There we go. So from a demonstration point of view, that's what I wanted to cover. Hopefully you've seen some of the new things that are coming in with the new release regarding ITOM. Obviously the big one being the new operator workspace, but lots of other smaller enhancements that have been made, things that will make it easier for you to go down the ITOM road with ServiceNow around security, and also the user experience with the mobile. Just on the screen there, you'll see we have a number of other webinars coming up. We don't have the dates for those yet, but we have those very soon, and we will obviously send those out. And this webinar was recorded, so we will send that out to you along with parts 1 and 2, which are based on ITSM and CSM. The two webinars that I've got listed there, the CMDB is dead, long live the CMDB. It's all about the new version 2 of the Common Services Data Model. So we'll be doing a webinar on that and the advantage of using it. And the other one is, we've entitled it ServiceNow to Service Wow. The idea being that there's the service portal within ServiceNow is pretty good as it is today, but we've been doing some work with customers where we've enhanced it beyond their wildest dreams. Not only making it look amazing and very, very professional, but also adding more and more functionality to make it an even better product. So we'll be doing a webinar on that as well. And the final thing I want to mention before we jump into Q&A is if any of you are on older versions and you're looking for some help with your upgrade, we do a 10-day assessment and upgrade program where we'll come in and we can assess where you are today with your product, not only the prod, but also the dev and any other instances you've got, and then work out a plan to actually get you upgraded. And also at the same time recommend better ways to be using the product as well. So if anyone is looking for help with the upgrade, please do get in touch. There is a handout attached to the control panel that you can see on your screens where it gives you a little bit more information on that. At that point, I'm going to be a little quiet. I'm going to hand back over to Chris and see what sort of questions we've got from you all.
Great. Thanks, Derek, and thanks everyone for sticking with us. We do have a few questions that have come in, so I'll see what we have time here for. But basically, first question comes in is around you mentioning it was the new operator workspace was only limited access. So how can people get access to that new operator workspace?
Okay. Yes, I should have spent a little bit more time talking about that. It's a good question. So the operator workspace you saw, as Chris just said there, it is limited access, which means that ServiceNow are still working on and developing and enhancing it. And so there's a program, if you want to start using that now, let us know. We put you in touch with the ServiceNow business unit who look after that, and they'll just give you a little run through as to what they expect. Really what they're after is a little bit of feedback before it goes GA. and then they can give you access to that via a plugin, and away you go. So just let us know if you want access to that, and we'll arrange that for you with the ServiceNow BU.
Okay.
Good question.
So they can email us there with the email at the screen, and we can handle that once that comes in. Perfect.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
The next one's around cloud vendors and discovery. So the question's more around, I guess, what other vendors does discovery support other than the ones you mentioned?
Okay. Yeah. So we talked about Google and IBM being added now, and obviously AWS and Azure I mentioned are already supported. But there's a few others as well, such as VMware Cloud. Not seeing so many customers take that up just yet, but we still do support it. And I did notice the other day, I think it was every month ServiceNow produce updates to the discovery patterns. So new things they're discovering. I did see one the other day where they'd added support for OpenShift. I think it was the container platform. So another cloud vendor that was supporting there as well.
Cool. Excellent. And I've got time for one more. This is probably a deeper conversation, but this one's around the new licensing structure. So people have heard that, or they had heard from their account manager, there's a new licensing structure for ITOM. Is there anything we can share about that, or our experiences with that, with the people on the call?
Oh, okay. There is, yeah. Bear with me. There's something I can show you here. Let me just go find it. I had a slide deck from ServiceNow a couple of weeks ago. Let me just find the right thing. Here we go. Let me just put this up on the screen. So you're absolutely right, Chris. This is a bit of a deeper subject, and we sit down for a good half an hour to an hour to go through this in real detail. But the high-level piece with the changes is we talked about the changes in the packaging in terms of visibility, health, and optimization, which we'll gather tools like ServiceNow and service mapping into visibility, etc. But there's 3 new license types that have been created now. So ITOM Operator Standard, which is just giving you visibility. Professional, which is visibility and health. And the Enterprise, which is all 3 of visibility, health, and optimization. So again, it's taking customers through that kind of maturity curve to get you through to optimization when you're ready for it. There was also a change to the way nodes are calculated. It's now called subscription units. That's a much bigger subject to cover, so it's definitely something we would want to sit down with you. And there's also, we need to think about if you were moving from old license types, you already had some ITOM pieces, there's a way of upgrading you from the old stuff to the new and giving you credits on what you've bought before. So that's a little bit more complicated. But ultimately, the whole point of this is to make it all much simpler going forward. But that screen you'll see there is the kind of highlights of what's happened with the license structure changes. Hopefully that helps.
Cool. Yeah. I think these used to be all separately licensable and not bundled together. And the problem was, I think, if you do service mapping, you kind of get the most of it. They're bundled together now where you get the most value out of them. So whereas before discovery wouldn't necessarily include service mapping, now the operator standard, it does, right? And event management wouldn't necessarily include the intelligence. Now they come together and, so you can discover, get everything visible and mapped, then monitor the events and do the predictive intelligence across those events that come in. So it's really been simplified down from probably 8 different things into these 3 kind of simplified buckets to help people, again, outcome based, right, in terms of what you're trying to do with the platform and what you're trying to achieve.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, I think that about does it for us today on the call. Thanks everyone for joining us in this 3-part series. As Derek mentioned, we will have these future webinars sent out to everyone who was on these. So stay tuned for those. I think we've got some 2 pretty good topics coming up before the end of the year. Thank you everyone for attending, and have a nice rest of the day.
Thanks everyone. Bye now.
Bye.